Welcome to the Saturday Cadence podcast. I'm Blake Biscardi, and remember, the Saturday Cadence podcast is the heartbeat of college football. We've seen two premier games deliver as instant classics, and now it's Texas's turn as the Longhorns host Georgia. Or will it be another thriller between Alabama and Tennessee in Neyland that becomes the game of the week? So my name is Blake Biscardi, and I've got Grant Kincaid with me for the 90th episode. Thank you guys so much for being with us all the way so far on Saturday Cadence. And as always, our show is brought to you by the Silver Bulletin. So Grant, 90 episodes in as of this show. Before we fully turn the page to week 8, let's continue those discussions on Ohio State, Oregon. We had some new developments actually today. This is Wednesday as we're recording. The show will be out to you guys as always on Thursday morning about the NCAA's new rule change with the intentional 12 men on the field penalty. So your reaction to Ohio State, Oregon, and then the NCAA's decision to update the rules this week.
I mean, I'm happy they did, but obviously it's disappointing that all of 72 hours or so after Oregon, Dan Lanning, kind of take advantage of that is when we get the change. But again, I'm glad they actually made the change because it was a rough way for Ohio State to end that game, and everyone could see that something was glaringly off with the way it kind of transpired, even if it was legal at the time.
I agree with you. And I said on the Monday show too, if that was before we knew whether or not it was intentional on Lanning's part or the staff, whoever decided to make that decision. And I said it was kind of a grandmaster chess move in terms of knowing the rule book and that situation, then being able to apply that in game for Oregon. But like you said, it's disappointing, especially for Ohio State fans out there, that this is basically an omission from the rule book where that time comes off the clock at a dead ball foul. I know it's not the same in the NFL. We saw some other talking heads around the sport, some premier ones too, mentioning that the time should not have gone off. It was wrong the way that it was officiated on the last drive. But again, I also mentioned this on the Monday show, officiating in general in college football has been lackluster and inconsistent throughout the year. And as we know, there were calls in both directions that were on the egregious side of things. Ohio State on the first drive with that completion, incompletion, interception with Will Kazmarek. And then, of course, Oregon there on the final drive, missing a hold on Jeremiah Smith, and then the OPI there, which, again, highly debated. And then you have that 12 men on the field. So just a really wacky ending in terms of officiating to that game. But overall, I thought both offenses played really well. I was impressed by both. Oregon more reliant on the big play, Ohio State more on the efficient side. I thought Will Howard was outstanding. So, Grant, let's focus in on the two quarterbacks, Will Howard and Dillon Gabriel, and their play. What stuck out to you the most for the way that they performed on that stage, top 3 matchup in Autzen Stadium, which now that we're letting all this dust settle, there are strong rumbles that it is now the loudest environment in the Big Ten. And I know those fans out in State College may have something to say about that in a couple of weeks when Ohio State comes to town for its second top 3 matchup or top 5 matchup thereafter on the road in less than a month.
Well, as far as the quarterbacks go, Dillon Gabriel was pretty brilliant in that game. There's no doubt. There was no throw that he couldn't make when he needed to make it. Obviously, Denzel Burke for Ohio State really struggled mightily. And that was kind of a thorn in the side of Ohio State and not being able to get off the field when they needed to. And there were so many opportunities for them to make stops and make that game, kind of in that game, in the fourth quarter when they were finally, hitting their stride on offense. And Will Howard, I don't want to take anything away from him either. Obviously, the end of the game was, awkward at best. But he did everything he could in that game to give Ohio State a win. I mean, they scored plenty of points, and they moved the ball, plenty well to win that game. It was just a very unfortunate ending.
Yeah, if you got told before the game as an Ohio State fan, player, coach, you're going to score 31 points and have over 400 yards of total offense, I really like my chances. You're not going to turn the ball over from Will Howard. I know Judkins had that fumble, and then you had that, awkward, strange onside kick there. It was the rocket onside kick, as I call it. You really feel pretty good. So, Grant, let's focus in on the two coaches here. Ryan Day, we'll start with him. 2-6 now against top five opponents. I think that statistic is being a little bit blown out of proportion. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone listening. I want you to go do this research yourself because I think this is a big thing where people need to be educated before they just make these opinions because there are some outrageous takes going out about Ryan Day that he can never win the big game. No one trusts him. He should be fired. I think that's absolute baloney. There's no way he could be fired. I think he is perfectly equipped to handle this job. I do think there are things he could fix. He's in his 6th year as a head coach. Go look at when Kirby Smart first won his national championship. Go look at Urban Meyer when he first won his national championship. Go look at a guy like Bob Stoops. Find me all of these big name premier head coaches, how far into their tenure and where they coached first to win a national championship. Ryan did this his first head coaching gig. Look at Steve Sarkisian. He's now in his 11th season as a head coach. He's just now getting on the national scene as of last year and then this year. And I mean, like staying in the top echelon of college football, not saying, oh, they're a swing team where they can look elite, but then also play very bad. Like this is Texas' first time being back. But I think it's outrageous to say that Ryan Day should be fired. I think he's a great coach. He's done tremendous things recruiting wise for the Ohio State program. He's faced a lot more top five matchups, whether in season or in the postseason, the Urban Meyer did, or even Coach Tressel. But look at Ryan Day's record against top 10 opponents. I just want you guys, the viewing audience and the listeners, to go research that statistic and then come back to me with your takes because that's where I think there's a little bit of a skew here with the top five opponents. So, Grant, do you think there's any standing to this? Ryan Day should be fired. They can't do it. I mean, this is a top 3 matchup on the road. You lose by a point. Arguably, you should have had time on the clock to kick a field goal, and then the game either ends like Georgia or you win it on a field goal and walk it off in Autzen in a top 3 game, no less. So, what do you make of this talk about Ryan Day?
Um, it's I just think back to, the what ifs of Ryan Day. What if that Clemson game had gone differently with Justin Fields
Right.
in the playoff? What if, they made that kick against Georgia? What if they scored 2 more points against Oregon? There are 3, just off the top of my head, glaring, very tight, anyone could win games that just haven't gone his way. Um, and I think people are singing a different tune if even one of those plays goes Ohio State's way. But throughout this year, there's a lot of football left. We're gonna find out plenty about Ryan Day, particularly against Michigan later this year.
Grant, even before that, I think Penn State on the road in Happy Valley, we're going to find out a ton about this team and
Oh
the
yeah,
resolve of
absolutely.
that
Yeah.
program. And I think it's going to become interesting now because I don't want to set off like a 5 alarm fire in Columbus. However, losing Josh Simmons is not being talked about as much nationally because the Ryan Day talk is taking the air out of the room. Losing Josh Simmons is big for Ohio State if he is out for the year. Now, I know they have Austin Sarafield who can come in and play. Maybe they move Tegra Chabola outside. We'll see what offensive line combination they come up with. I certainly do trust Chip Kelly and Justin Fry and Ryan Day to make the right decision there. It might be a little bit of plug and chug, guess and check. They do have the off week here to get that fixed, but that's going to be a tricky situation for the Buckeyes in Happy Valley. I think they're going to need to run a little bit more max protect, keep G. Scott in there because Will Kazmarek is also not going to play, and he's been a great run blocking tight end. So to your point, plenty of football left in this season. I think there's a lot of time for the Buckeyes to move forward. All of their goals are still in front of them. Ohio State fans out there listening, do not punt on this season. It's not over. You lost a top 3 matchup on the road by 1 point that you could have and should have probably won. And I get it, like you said, Grant's the what ifs. No one wants to hear it. Just take a breath. Plenty of football ahead of you. You beat Penn State. You win the rest of your games. You win the rivalry game. You end up in Indianapolis for a Big Ten championship and a likely rematch. And now you got 60 minutes to get a bye in the playoff and have a revenge game there. So I think for Ohio State, everything's ahead of you. Just take a breath. It really hurts and it stings to lose, especially in that fashion. But everything's going to be okay moving forward. You just got to take care of that business on your schedule. But Grant, looking at Dan Lanning, what is this win and that decision to put the 12th man on the field there? Just how Oregon was able to steal a possession with the onside kick. I know they got the fumble, so that was a takeaway, but they stole a possession with the onside kick. They stole a couple seconds off the clock in a crucial moment. What does that say about Dan Lanning and his staff, the way that Oregon prepared for this game and ultimately performed and won?
Well, I think Oregon recognized what we recognize, and that's if Ohio State plays a clean game, Oregon will have to play a basically perfect game to be able to beat Ohio State. At the rate Ohio State was moving on offense and the way their defense was playing, just statistically atop every category you could think of in college football. And when they got that onside kick, that hurt Ohio State tremendously. Obviously, it was something that they did not see coming. But when you steal possession like that and you capitalize off of it at home in an environment like that, I think Ohio State kind of failed to, seize the momentum and pull away, and Ohio State or Oregon capitalized. And obviously, at the end, whoever called that, if someone called that 12 man, um, it essentially won them the game, and it's something that's going to be talked about for a while.
It's a good point you bring up about the momentum shifts, and that's the two things I want to point out to outside of that last drive. Ohio State had two opportunities to go up by two scores in the game after scoring a touchdown and then getting a stop defensively. The one was the Judkins fumble where he was not really fumbled. He was just stripped. It was a great play
Yeah, yeah,
up the
very
middle.
unfortunate. Yeah.
It was a great defensive play. Oregon gets the ball back and then they score. So there's a 14-point potentially swing. And then in the second half there, you had 3rd and 3. Will Howard takes his eye off the snap. Ohio State has to punt after a goal line stand and then a big play to get some breathing room out to the 27-yard line. Now you have a 3rd and 3. You don't get it. You botch the snap. You got to kick the ball away. Again, Oregon comes away with points. There's a swing again. So just those moments, like you said, Ohio State did not capitalize on the momentum opportunities, and Oregon did because they stole it. So I do tip my cap to Dan Lanning and his staff, and Oregon immediately cements itself in the playoff conversation, national championship contender, top 3 team in the country. I think they're for real. We saw what the receivers can do. Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson. Dylan Gabriel, like you said, again, performed really well. I think Oregon's a really good team, and their ceiling, we're now going to learn about it. We'll talk more about them at the end of the show in our picks. But I do think Oregon's ceiling is what people expected coming into the year, that they can contend for national championship. But Grant, there's 2 teams now in the SEC. One team is the number 1 team in the country, and then the other team has been the number 1 team in the country, and that is Georgia. They are going to Austin this week to play Texas. What are your thoughts on this matchup? Because I actually think Texas looks more like the traditional Georgia teams. And when I say traditional, I mean of the 2020 decade. So I think Texas has the really good run game. I think Texas has the steady quarterback. I think Texas has the good playmakers. They have a really solid defense. They're great in the trenches. You can't really run the football on them. They're athletic than Georgia does this year. So what do you make of that matchup coming into this game? I know it's in Austin, so it's at home for Texas. They have the home crowd and everything. But I actually feel that Texas is the better team, top to bottom right now. So I like Texas in this matchup. What do you make of it with Georgia coming in there with their quote unquote backs against the wall because they already lost to Alabama, but they're in more of a desperation than Texas would be?
I definitely side with you as far as Texas. I think they are, like I said, the deepest, most well-rounded team in that matchup. And after what we saw, with Georgia, they're it's pretty boom or bust, just in general for them right now. And when you have a Texas team that can not only rely on Ewers coming back this week, but they have Arch Manning if they ever need him, and he can produce at a very high level for Texas. So it's going to be, I mean, this is one of those matchups that we circled at the beginning of the year. Just,
Right.
how are we finally getting this? Texas hosting Georgia is not something we thought we'd see in a very long time. But I do think Texas has the edge, especially right now. But who knows? I mean, it's Georgia and it's Kirby Smart, so we will see.
Grant, where would you place the head coaching edge coming into this game? Steve Sarkisian or Kirby Smart? Because I touched on it and then you finished my point there.
Mm.
Kirby Smart, Georgia, their backs aren't totally against the wall, but there is an element that Georgia needs to win this game. And I don't know if they can. So do you give the coaching edge here mentally to Kirby Smart in Georgia because of that factor, because they're the underdog, because they're on the road, because they're being doubted? Or does Steve Sarkisian have it because he has the better team and it's not so much about coaching matchups, it's more about personnel on the field?
Well, I think coaching matchup, um, and if obviously if Sarkisian wins this game, then my point kind of changes. But I think Kirby Smart has the coaching edge just from the fact that he's been in so many big games and big moments, raucous environments, and he's won a lot of these games. Obviously, not against Alabama, but he's experienced things that I don't think Sarkisian has. Sark, like you said, he does have the edge with personnel, and certainly at quarterback from what we've seen so far this year. So being at home, Sark has, an advantage in a few different ways. But coaching itself, I think Kirby's going to take the edge. But I don't think they're that far apart. I think Sarkisian can kind of seize that spot, as a top coach, a coach who can beat Kirby Smart in Georgia, obviously, if he does.
What about the quarterback battle? We saw Quinn Ewers come back from injury last week against Oklahoma in Red River, started slow, but got it together. Texas rolled. They had no issues at all. Arch Manning as a backup, either one of those two have to go. I think Texas is in good shape and trustworthy shape for that matter. But then Carson Beck, he's coming in there, Heisman favorite to start the season, really high expectations, first round draft pick, all the things. Comes in there, has been quiet, has been off the radar. Georgia has struggled in a couple games. They took the L to Alabama. Then they find themselves giving up more points than they should have to Mississippi State last week, only winning that game by 10. Who has the advantage in the quarterback battle here with the game in Austin? Is it Texas because they have two? Is it Texas because yours is just better? Or is this that game where Carson Beck is going to show us why he had all of that preseason hype and why he should be a first round draft pick and why he has been one of the top prospects in college football for the last couple of seasons?
I think Ewers has just, he's had plenty of experience at this point. Not to say that Beck hasn't, but I think Ewers has really come into his own this year. He's really feeling comfortable, in his position in that offense. With him and Sark seem to have a great connection by now. And I think what really sets Ewers apart is his ability to move around the pocket and be mobile, and kind of fit through spots that Carson Beck simply can't physically. Carson Beck is physically an imposing, very tall quarterback, but it takes away from his mobility and his ability to move away and out of the pocket. And I think Ewers has really taken advantage of that and orchestrated that offense well. So I'd have to give him the edge.
I'm with you there. And I think what's unique about Ewers compared to other quarterbacks around the country, and I know Carson Beck also fits this mold, so I can give credit to both quarterbacks here. They've both been in this program for multiple years. Now, I know Ewers transferred in, but this is his third year with Texas. And he's progressed through the program. He's developed under Sarkisian and Carson Beck, same thing under Kirby Smart. And I know he's had Todd Monken and a couple offensive coordinators here. I like both quarterbacks. I think they're both really good. I think they're going to be higher prospects in the draft. I don't know if they're going to end up being the first one and two off the board with, Shador Sanders out there. But I like this quarterback matchup. I think it's going to be the best quarterback duel that we've seen yet. I just don't know in terms of talent. I just don't know if the scoreboard will reflect that because we saw the duel between Beck and Milroe. We saw it between Howard and Gabriel. Now we're going to see it between Ewers and Beck. And I think this is going to be a good game. Again, I'm just not fully confident in that belief in Georgia on the outside that Beck can have enough to actually put the game on his back to win it. I think he's going to need a run game, and I just don't know if Georgia has the run game. But in Beck, I trust him. I just don't know that Georgia's going to win the line of scrimmage and be able to run the football. But Grant, let's move into Alabama, Tennessee now. This is another big game in the SEC in Knoxville. Neyland Stadium is going to be rocking. The last time Alabama came in here, 2022, we all remember how that game goes. Game-winning field goal, goalpost ended up in the river. Do we see similar scenes here? What is the thought process coming into this game? Because Alabama, 28-0 against Georgia, all of a sudden they haven't played defense since. They've lost a game to Vanderbilt. They struggle with South Carolina. We're on the ropes. Tennessee started so hot. They play Oklahoma, and we're like, all right, they're in Norman. It's on the road. It's Nico Alamaliava's first road game. You know, how's this going to go? They didn't score that many points. The offense looked okay. But that's been the trend in the SEC for Tennessee. They were not scoring at the same clip. Nico Alamaliava is only averaging just over 5 yards a pass in SEC play. So both of these teams look so much better in September. Now that we've gotten into October, they've taken that step back a little bit where you're rethinking, okay, just how good is Alabama? Can they go on the road and win this game? How good is Tennessee? Are they able to win a game against a high-powered offense like Alabama? What are the thoughts coming into this game with both teams being shaky in terms of outlook for the rest of the season?
Yeah, this is a very intriguing matchup. Like you said, it's two teams coming off, not coming directly off of losses, but very recent bad losses.
They're
And
fresh.
kind of, yeah, and just kind of sputtering into this game. Um, and man, so many years with, when Alabama had Saban and they would go into Tennessee and they would just take care of business over and over and over again. It makes you want to be like, well, Alabama's going to come in and take care of business again. They're going to be smoking the cigars at the end of the game. But something about Alabama this year, and even though Tennessee, had that thriller against Arkansas and dropped that game, I feel like Heupel and this offense, along with James Pierce, and Tennessee's defense becoming something, a bit of a force in the SEC. I think I like Tennessee in the matchup because of that. But it's really interesting because both of these teams, you don't really know what you're going to get.
That's the thing. It's so difficult to predict when you see these teams who have showed you some of the highest of highs in the season, but also some really low lows. And it comes down to looking at different matchups in the game because styles make fights and what matchup can win this game for which team. What can you exploit on the other team? And I think you look at the defenses and say, okay, if I am Kalen DeBoer in Alabama, Jalen Milrow, what can I do to this Tennessee defense? Can I hit the big plays? There's some vulnerabilities back there. If you are Josh Heupel, what can I scheme against this Alabama defense that has not been able to hold its own in its last, 10 quarters of football? So I think Tennessee's going to hit some big plays, but I think Alabama's going to hit more big plays. And I think Jalen Milrow's legs are going to be the deciding factor in the game. Now, I'm not going to make the pick yet because we'll do that in the next segment. But when I'm looking at this game, I think coaching is pretty much a wash for me. Quarterback edge is definitely going to Jalen Milrow. I think I give the defensive edge I'm giving to Tennessee. Team edge, I think, is Alabama. It's really hard because Bama has not been consistent and they're not giving you a lot of data points to back up, oh, I think they can do this, or they used to be able to do this, or traditionally or historically, Bama teams look like this. Well, this is different now under Kalen DeBoer.
Uh,
So we're
yeah,
just now starting that data.
yeah. I just see them really struggle in an environment like Vanderbilt alone.
Right.
And then I try to imagine them in Rocky Top, you
Yeah.
know, trying to do the same thing. I just don't know if this defense can hold up.
It's right. I mean, it's going to
Yeah.
be a loud, raucous environment. Can the defense communicate? Can they make enough plays to slow down this Tennessee? So we will find out. But let's slide into the Saturday 7 picks here, Grant. We've got Georgia, Texas. We just talked about it. And then Alabama, Tennessee. Those are going to be our first two games. We did the rundown for them. We previewed them quickly. What's your pick for Georgia, Texas? The spread in the game is Texas minus 3.5 at home. Are they able to win and cover? Or do you think this is that Kirby Smart game where he just shows we have this big game experience? Come and beat us.
I think I'm gonna have to take Texas. just from being at home and clear talent edge, particularly at the quarterback position. I trust them a little bit more.
I'm with you. I have Texas. I don't know if Georgia's going to be able to run the football. I like Texas everywhere. I don't like Georgia. And when I see a matchup like that, I'm like, all right, you know what? I need to take Texas. I think quarterback is pretty even. Skill position players give me Texas. Defense give me Texas. Trenches give me Texas. So that's how I'm making this pick. I'm going to take the Longhorns at home. And if Georgia's not careful, they haven't been in a spot like this in a long time. If Georgia's not careful and they lose, this loss could spiral. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not saying I expect Georgia to go and lose 5 games. Georgia has not lost 2 regular season games in about 5 years. So I just want to caution that this loss could spiral should they lose. But Alabama favored by 3 on the road at Tennessee. This line has held steady so far this week. We've both hinted at our pick, but Grant, officially, who do you take in this matchup on Rocky Top Saturday night?
I'd have to take Tennessee in this matchup. Um, like we both said, it's a really tough one. They're both dealing with very glaring inconsistencies in their team, and on sides of the ball that we wouldn't expect, like Alabama's defense. But I'm gonna have to go with Tennessee and Heupel at home.
Yeah, I fully expect Tennessee to come into this game locked in. They're going to be ready to go. They're going to make some plays. I think they get out to a lead early. Not confidently, Grant. I'm going to take Alabama. Now, in the preseason, I did this last week too, so we will see if preseason Blake is better than in season Blake. I said I had Oregon over Ohio State in the preseason. I switched it to Ohio State. Similar situation. I had Tennessee in the preseason. I'm going to switch that to Alabama. I think Jalen Milroe makes 1 or 2 extra plays that decide this matchup. So give me Bama. Next, we'll have Miami favored by 4.5 at Louisville. This is a tricky matchup. The Hurricanes coming off a bye week, and they have escaped the 2 games prior against Virginia Tech and Cal. Louisville coming in, 5th straight game, contending for the ACC, kind of hanging around. Spread's only 4.5, though. Who do you like in this matchup?
Yeah, Louisville has hung in a lot more games than we thought they would, and they've competed this year in a lot more games than people thought they would, I'm sure. But I will take Miami at 4.5. But like you said, watch for Miami to skid soon because they've really been plateauing, and I think they may have peaked too early.
I think you said that perfectly, Grant. I'm just going to retweet your pick there. I like Miami for the same reasons. I agree with you. They're plateauing. They have peaked. Not to say they can't rise again, but I think Miami's going to get clipped soon. But it's not going to be Saturday. Next matchup on the board is going to be Auburn at Missouri. The Tigers favored by 6.5 at home. This is a team that people expected to be into the top 10, top 15 at worst. Not performed anywhere near expectations, got ran out of College Station. Now they come in against a team in Auburn that is 2-4. Their record says they're worse than they are. Who do you like in this one?
Uh, this is man, it's really a coin flip because these teams, game to game, are totally and completely impossible to gauge. Missouri by a touchdown, I definitely understand they probably have the better coach, probably the better overall team right now at home. But man, anything could happen after I watched that Missouri team last week. I'll take Auburn to cover, but Missouri to win that one.
Grant, I'm with you on Auburn here. I think Hugh Freeze and Auburn find a way to win this game. It's not to say I don't have full confidence in Eli Drinkwitz and Brady Cook and Luther Burden. They've just not shown me that I can believe in them. And after that showing in College Station against Texas A&M, I said, you know what? They're getting the nod to the top 10. I don't really think they're a top 10 team. I'm going to believe in Missouri. Well, I'm not a believer in cancel culture, but I did implement a cancel culture on Missouri. So I'm going to take Auburn here because I canceled Missouri after that performance. They really let me down. Next game is going to be Michigan favored by 1.5 and a surprise at ranked Illinois. this game tricky for Michigan, trying to find a quarterback after the off week, coming off a loss against Washington, find themselves favored by 1.5 points. I think this game is going to be an ugly, old school Big Ten slugfest. Who wins this game and by how much?
Man, this is really tough because, like you said, Michigan is coming off a loss where they had next to no identity on offense and certainly at the quarterback position. And Illinois and Brett Bielema have found themselves in contention in the Big Ten. They get this game at Champaign, like you said. I'm gonna have to go with Michigan suffering another loss in Champaign in this environment. Um, I don't think that Michigan really has a direction right at this point in the season. Uh, and I think Illinois, there's just something different in Champaign going on this year. And I'm going to take the Illini, and I know it's crazy to say, but that line is so tight that I think I'm going to have to go with that.
It's essentially a pick 'em. And
Yeah.
Brett Bielema certainly has that program trending in the right direction. I thought against Penn State, they left points on the field, and they could have stayed in that game. They just did not. I feel like Michigan is going to try to do the same thing to Illinois that Penn State did. Now, granted, that game was in State College. This one's in Champaign, like you mentioned. Michigan's going to want to run the football, and they're going to want to play solid defense. So give me Michigan to squeak this one out. I think Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards find a way on the ground to get a win on the road. Ugly, ugly, ugly game.
Yes, very. It's going to be for sickos, Big Ten sickos.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Next game is going to be LSU -2.5 at Arkansas, LSU coming off a big win at home over Ole Miss. Who wins this game?
I think LSU continues to trend in the right direction. Arkansas, obviously they beat Tennessee. They're not a team to take lightly in the SEC this year at all, like they have been lately. But I think LSU is they're still on a roll here, and I think this is where they're going to start to make hay.
So last week I did not like the spot Ole Miss was put in, even though I think Ole Miss is better than LSU. This is the time where I don't like LSU in the spot that they're in. So I'm going to take Arkansas at home in an upset. I think Sam Pittman and company find a way to get this one done in Fayetteville. Grant, last game on here. Everyone welcomed Oregon to the Big Ten last week, beating Ohio State. Little do they know what going to West Lafayette is on a short week, coming off a big game when you're kind of looking past them when they're not good. Probably going to see black uniforms from Purdue. That part is just color I'm adding because it's usually how that works in the Big Ten. Oregon has to make the trip. They are 27.5-point favorites, a very big number coming off a top 3 win. Do they handle the environment that is Ross-Ade Stadium, the House of Horrors, in October? Historically, this is a terrible spot to be in, especially at night. This is a Friday night game, a short week. How does Oregon handle being in West Lafayette?
I mean, it's going to be different. They're going to go from, the biggest game of any of their lives at home in Oregon against a team like Ohio State, which has NFL draft picks littered on their team, to, probably a satellite airport in Lafayette, Indiana, to a stadium that's a fourth of the size of theirs, out in the middle of nowhere, to play this Purdue Boilermaker team that they're going to be underestimating all week after a win against Ohio State that basically set them up for a top 2 seed in the playoff run. This is it's almost like when they scheduled Oregon, they said let's really baptize them by fire, because a non-Saturday game at night in Purdue after Ohio State is about the most trap game you could ever have. And I think Purdue, I'm pretty confident in them covering 27.5 just because of what I've seen in the past.
You can sound every alarm you want to in Eugene, Oregon for this game. It is not going to matter when you get on the field in Ross-Ade Stadium and have to play Purdue at night, like you said, on a short week, non-Saturday game. That's a Purdue cover for me. So I'm going to take the Boilermakers as well. Grant, we're going to wind down this show. I'm going to ask you a quick trivia question. If you don't know the answer, just tell me. Last time Georgia beat a top 5 team at home, or excuse me, last time Texas beat a top 5 team at home, what year was that?
Oh gosh,
Nin-
2009.
1999.
Oh my
We
gosh.
were just young bulls.
Yikes.
1999,
Yeah, that is rough.
25 years ago. That streak
Man,
ends on Saturday.
yeah,
Crazy to think about since
yeah.
Texas has won a couple national championships in there.
Oh yeah. That's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, we appreciate you guys listening to today's episode. This is going to be a fantastic weekend of college football. Please enjoy it. Again, cancel your plans, stay out of the apple orchards. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review. It really helps us out. Make sure you're checking us out on social media at Saturday Cadence for more content throughout the week. And remember, the Saturday Cadence podcast is the heartbeat of college football. For Grant Kincaid, I am Blake Biscardi, and we will see you next time. God bless.